So you're going through your divorce and you're at the part where you're negotiating the finances. So that might be child support, it might be spousal support, it might be the property division piece. And the two of you look like deer in headlights. You're both afraid of what this means. Maybe one party was a stay-at-home parent and therefore they're relying on the support that they get from the ex-spouse in order to live. Maybe one of you just happens to make a very low income, and so again you're relying on the support from the other person. And from the other person's point of view, they're making all this income, and now a big cut of that income goes to the other person in divorce, and so they're also freaking out, basically thinking, well, now my net income after tax minus all of the support is so much smaller than what I'm used to. How am I going to live? These are really, they're real fears, and these are true life experiences that can be extremely difficult and very scary. And I've lived through it. I know how hard it is. At the end of the day, you really have to think through when you're negotiating the financials with each other. Sometimes we have maybe a professional or a person behind us trying to egg us on in terms of getting exactly what we are entitled to, and fighting for gold basically, and I'm going to take that other person for everything they have. And you should really think about that strategy. Life isn't fair, divorce isn't fair. Family law can often be viewed as unfair. And sometimes maybe we feel that the other person has wronged us and therefore we want them to pay, and therefore we're going after everything we can possibly go after. There's all kinds of reasons that we're fighting for what we're fighting for. Some of it is literally, I just feel like whatever is fair is what I want, but whatever is fair may be very difficult for the other person to pay. You need to think about the whole negotiation holistically. What are you trying to achieve? Of course you need to live comfortably. Of course you need to be able to buy food and provide for your children if you have children. But at the end of the day, if you essentially bankrupt the other person, either from them paying you support or somebody owing somebody an equalization payment, if you bankrupt the other person, basically put them in such a negative financial position that they're going to be struggling significantly, how is that going to impact your children? So if the other parent can barely put food on the table and the children go over there and now they're not happy because they don't like the living or the lifestyle that's happening at the other parent's home as a result of the divorce, is that what you want? And I'm not saying there's no right or wrong here. It is, very personal in what you decide to go after and how you decide to resolve. And it may be entirely fair that you get a certain amount of money from that person in terms of support and or an equalization payment. But at the end of the day, if you get exactly what you feel you deserve, is that going to leave the other person just in such a horrible position that they're left hardly being able to eat? Is that what you want for them? And yes, sometimes we can get wrapped in the negativity that surrounds divorce, and sometimes we do want that other person. We want to take some kind of revenge on them. Those are normal, natural feelings. And it's up to you what you feel is right or wrong. But just think through all of the steps that you're going to be taking. Think through what you're fighting for, and think through if that is worth it. Like at the end of the day, if you get everything that you want out of this divorce negotiation, is it worth it? It might be, but could it be that if you fight for everything tooth and nail and you end up getting all this money from the other person and now they're left with very little, is that worth it as well? Is it worth seeing them struggle when they're with your kids? Is it worth them being so stressed out that they're not able to parent the way they normally would parent because they're just so stressed out about the money? And again, there's not a right or wrong here, but these are things that you want to think about as you're approaching those negotiations. If we're so stuck in the negativity, the anger, the fear, just all that negative stuff that happens in divorce, if you're so stuck in that and you're not able to think rationally, and that's without judgment, it's just that you're wrapped in that negativity, is this the right time to have that conversation? Do you need to cool off before you have a rational conversation to figure out what is best for this family? Although it's two households, you're still a family if you have children, and you're still going to be dealing with each other for a very long time. Is it worth pursuing every last cent from the other person in the scheme of life? in the scheme of, if I'm looking forward, fast forward 5 years from now, we each have our own two households. The children are coming and going between both places. Are you going to be happy seeing your child unhappy in the other home because you've gotten everything that you wanted and now they're left barely surviving? And again, there's really no right or wrong here, but think through holistically what all of these details actually mean to your lifestyle. And if you're the person who's going to be struggling as a result of divorce from a financial perspective, what can you do about that? This is a great time to talk to a financial professional, because sometimes they can offer you some information that you may be very scared going into this whole discussion and wondering what's going to happen to me. Maybe they can offer you some information that might settle you down a little bit. It might provide some hope and a reality check that maybe it's not as dire as you think it is, or perhaps they'll tell you something that's opposite, but you need to hear that information. Perhaps they can give you ideas on, one, how to even settle this financial, the actual settlement. There are different options in terms of whether you're transferring a portion of your RSP, transferring a portion of your pension, a cash payment, something to do with the home and what taking out some of the equity and giving that to the other person. There are different options. So it's really great to be able to talk to a financial professional who can give you different ideas on what can be done to satisfy those financial requirements. The other thing to think about now, let's fast forward, you've done the settlement and you're struggling financially. What can you do to help yourself? There's really two areas that you have to focus on, right? It's your expenses and your income. If your expenses are really high, do you know where you're spending your money? Sometimes we don't realize where we're spending, and so it's a good idea to do a budget. It's a good idea to look through all of your financials and figure out where you're spending that money. And if you're not sure on how to do that, get the help of a financial professional who can walk you through that. Maybe they can find areas in your spending that you can control better and therefore have more money at the end of the day left in your bank account. The other option is obviously your income. If you have not enough money, then it might be that you have to figure out how can you make more income. What are the different alternatives available to you? It might be that you might have to go back to school to develop some kind of skill in order to get a job that pays you a little bit more. It might be that you just have to increase your hours depending on what you do because you have to bring in a little bit more income. I mean, these are simple solutions, of course, and not everything is simple, but perhaps talking to a financial professional will give you some ideas that you might not have thought about as you're going through this process. And those ideas might help bring you a little bit of peace and reduce some of that fear. It is definitely a difficult process, but you will get through it. Food for thought. Have a great day.